Thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining the book club tonight. My name is Hallie Wilf, and I'm excited to join this evening's book club because we are very fortunate to welcome and have Mr. Leon Kleiner, the author of this month's book, Save My Children, with us. For me, tonight is very special, not only because I read the book and thought it was great, but it's also always very special to hear a Holocaust survivor's firsthand account of their experiences. So because Mr. Kleiner is a good friend of my grandparents, was a good friend of my grandparents, Harry and Judy Wilf, Ziroho Livraha. So it's very nice to have another connection to my grandparents and our family's history. I actually was with my dad earlier, and he was trying to locate a image of Mr. Kleiner with my grandparents for tonight's event, but unfortunately was not able to find one. But anyway, thank you again, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Mr. Kleiner, for joining with us.
My pleasure.
I'm going to pass it along to Rachel to ask the first question of this meeting.
Go ahead. I'm ready.
Sorry, I was on mute. It's me again. So I think I'm gonna just start off the questions, and you can go on and tell bits of your story, however you want to do it. But I'm gonna ask you, in what point of the story, can everyone just mute themselves? Sorry. So, in what point of the story did you feel like your childhood was really taken from you? Was there like a moment where you felt like that you were no longer a child anymore?
There were many moments. It's a matter of a few years.
Yeah.
1939 until 1944. And then, of course, 1945 and so on. I was still wandering, still going to different places in the world and not settled in. But my childhood was really interrupted in 1939 and lasted until 1944.
Anyone who has any question can feel free to unmute themselves and ask or do the hand raise function.
You know, at that time, it was a matter of survival. So I didn't analyze, or no one analyzed how they feel. They just wanted to survive from day to day. It was a matter of life and death. So when people ask me, how did you feel? I really don't have an answer because I didn't feel anything. All I felt was to survive. There was no psychological analysis of what one feels.
Did someone raising their hand, did someone have the next question? I know I have one. If
Go ahead.
So actually, I know this is more of a philosophical question, but I was thinking as I was reading throughout the book, it's, you know, people always ask the question, can people really change? And to me, this book is evidence that, of course, people can. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but Timis?
Yes.
So, you know, I was thinking to myself a lot, even if he had changed because it was out of guilt for his past actions, it still means that he changed. But how do the fact that so many priests and there was so much theological anti-Semitism and so much of the church contributed to the anti-Semitism in the general population, how do you feel about the fact that he was really changed by the words of a priest in prison?
He was a very complicated individual. He, prior to World War II, as I write in the book, was very much anti-Semitic to the point of sometimes being violent. And that was the nature of Ukrainians in this little town at that time. He, as I said in the book, he was arrested and he was sent to a prison. And in the prison, he was with a priest in the next cell, who's apparently the priest who must have been very human individual. And when Timis confessed his sins to him, he scolded him and said, "You are going to pay for it in the other world," something like that. And Timis took it to heart. And he promised the priest that if he survives, because he was supposed to have been executed, he was sentenced to be executed. So when he finally confessed, he promised the priest that should he survive this ordeal, he will never harm anyone. He also was a little bit of an adventurer. He liked challenges. He had inborn intelligence. Not that he was an educated man, but he had street smarts. And thanks to him, my brother, my sister, and myself, my sister's boyfriend at that time, who became later her husband, and my aunt, we survived thanks to his, I would say, heroism. I mean, he's my hero until this day. And I felt that I should talk about it.
I'm making sure that I'm checking for hands raised, but when you said you felt that you should talk about it, what was the moment? Because I know in the introduction you talked about how you have not spoken much. You almost shared your testimony with Spielberg, but then you just
Correct.
to what ultimately brought you to.
Well, that particular day when I had the appointment with people for the interview, I just couldn't do it. I can't explain exactly why, but I woke up and I said, I just can't do it. You know, there are times that when you remember these things, it is very hard to vocalize and to talk about it. And that was a day that I couldn't. I regret it later on, but it was already too late. However, my brother and my sister did it. And that's why I decided to do a book.
Mr. Kleiner,
Yes.
I have a question, but before I do want to say that if you wanted to be interviewed by the Shoah Foundation, there is still time, and they are still interviewing survivors. Even during COVID, they're sending laptop type things to survivors and conducting the interviews remotely. So if it's of interest, it can still be arranged at any time.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was under the impression that they finished doing it already quite some time ago.
But then they started up again within the last 18 or 20 months. So it is still possible.
And Yad Vashem will also be remote.
And Yad Vashem will also. My question is, if you could just talk to us about your process in writing this book and how it came about, and just
I had in mind to do the book for a couple of years. And then I started writing, and I realized that I need help writing this book. And I met Edwin who was from Los Angeles, and we were talking about it. He is a documentary filmmaker, and he said he can help me. And we had quite a few sessions. He used to come to New Jersey, to my home, and we had quite a few sessions, a period of 1.5 years. And this is the result. This is the book.
Well, we're very glad you went through the process and shared your experience with us.
It wasn't easy
I'm sure.
to recollect all the details, and it's still not easy, even talking about it. But here I am, and I'm happy to be still alive and about it.
Leon, can I just ask you what messages you have for the future Jewish generations, like what you would want to tell, what you would tell your grandchildren, or what you want the future generations to know?
Well, first of all, I wish everyone not to have to go through anything similar like what we did. I hope it never happens again. Never again, even though there is anti-Semitism all around us. And as far as being now sitting at home because of the virus, if I compare it to what I went through for 9 months in the bunker, I am not that, it's not a tragedy for me, where it is for some people. So I tell my grandchildren and I tell everyone, it'll pass. You are not hungry. You are not starving. You are not threatened. Just sit still and it'll go away.
And you mentioned the first time when you went back to search for your father's grave and you didn't find it. When was the first time that you went back to the town, your hometown?
That was about, say, 20 years ago.
Did you always expect to go back, or were you at some point planning not?
I wanted to go back, and with my daughter, her then husband.
34 years ago. 34 years ago.
My daughter just corrected me. It was 34 years ago.
Wow.
And I went again with my grandchildren. And again, we went to the cemetery. And again, we were very disappointed. Of course, my there's no monument, there's no way to find his grave. And my mother is in a mass grave, which has a little monument in this little town.
I'm just going to oh, sorry, Rachel.
Somebody have a question? Or?
Yeah. Oh, Barry, I can't tell if you're raising your, yeah, okay.
Could you talk to us about your proudest achievement and accomplishment since the war?
Say it again, Barry?
Your proudest achievement or accomplishment since the war?
My proudest accomplishment is to have 2 beautiful daughters, 5 grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
Wow.
That's, I think, is a big accomplishment after what I went through.
A lot of nachas.
Yes.
Yes, we love each other and we are in constant contact. And unfortunately, all I can see now is photographs and be on Zoom.
Somebody just typed a question. They want to know about the town that you are from. Could you tell us a little bit about the background of the town you came from and what it was like growing up there before the war?
I was born in Tarnopol, which is a town in the eastern part of Poland, close to Russian border. And my childhood there was, before the war, was very nice. We were very comfortable and I had many friends. Of course, until the Russian Soviet Union in 1939, and all that changed due to the fact that my father had a factory and he became known as a capitalist and he was not tolerated by the regime. We had to have a passport which indicated that we are bourgeois. It had paragraph 11 at that time. And things changed for my parents, they changed drastically. For me, not so, because I was still very young. I was 11 years old, 12 years old, and the Soviets had a very, very good program for children to participate in different activities, which during Polish times, we did not have that. We had to invent our own activities. But under the Soviet regime, they created activities for young kids. So in a sense, I was doing well. Not so my parents, because his business was confiscated, liquidated, and he unfortunately was very much disappointed with the Russians. And that also prevented him from running away to Russia when things were getting, when he could still do it. And some people did it. I think Lenny's parents went to Russia. Though in Russia it was very hard and very tough, but people still survived. Most people, some did not. But my father, of course, later felt very guilty, depressed, and he felt that he failed us and he didn't save the family. But in a way, I can understand his reluctance because he believed that the German people and the Austrian people are very cultured, and something like what happened will never happen. And that was not true, of course.
I know I think Rachel Ashendorf.
Was your family religious before the war, and did your opinion, or did your belief in God change during or throughout the war and after the war?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Like, was your family religious before the war? And did your
Family was traditional.
Mhm. And did your belief in
We
God
went,
change after the war?
do I believe in God?
Or did your opinion change? Yeah.
It's a loaded question.
Um,
I would like to answer it, really. We were traditional. We once in a while went to synagogue. Friday night, we had candles and Shabbat dinners. And that was the extent of our Jewishness.
well, I saw you did, you talked about how your family felt it was what was most important, even if you weren't religious, what was important was to have pride in your Jewish customs and tradition, because that's keeping those traditions is what has kept the Jewish people alive and what has allowed them to survive through so many atrocities. So do you still feel that way today?
Do I feel what?
Sorry, do you still feel that the best way for the Jewish people to survive is to continue to keep the traditions and customs, whether or not someone is religious, but to keep them out of tradition?
Well, we keep the tradition. I belong to a temple and I support the temple. I support Jewish causes. And my children keep tradition. My grandchildren keep tradition. And I'm very happy about it.
I know, well, hold on.
Look, you have to realize that 1.5 million children, innocent children, perished. Now you tell me why. You have no answer. No one has. So it's very hard to believe. Next question.
Let's see, I'm looking for, I know we have some of our most dedicated book club members on here, including Avi, Rena. Do either of you have a question that you'd like to ask? I see Avi his brain is working.
Oh, I have a question.
She's asking some of the people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Poppy, hi Poppy.
Hi, Carly.
Can you tell everyone a little more about Timish's how he saved you exactly for those who might not be aware or have read the book? How did he go about saving you and Elsa and Eddie and Manny?
Well, he befriended my parents. And the way he befriended my parents was because we were supposed to give back furs to the Germans. All the furs that we had, fur coats and so on, had to be given away. And my mother had a fur coat, which at that time she did not give away because she read the book. She went to save my brother, who was in a very bad condition, in a very bad camp, concentration camp. And she bribed the commandant of the camp and got him out. At that time, all the furs had to be given back, but she had no chance to give it. So when she came back from this camp with her fur, we didn't want to give it back because it was already past the time to give back the fur coats. So we were afraid to give it to the Germans because we would be punished possibly. However, we wanted to exchange it for food. It was a beautiful fur coat that my mother had. So through a Gentile, he introduced Timis to us, whose wife wanted the fur. Of course, when they came into our house, my parents were frightened because they knew that knowing his past, they knew that who knows what he's going to do. He'll denounce us to the Gestapo and so on. But the Gentile who brought them in sort of pacified my parents and told them, don't worry about it, Timis is not going to do anything. In the meantime, they sat down to talk to my parents, and Timis was taken by my parents. And for some reason, he developed a liking for them. And they spent hours talking. And that's how the friendship started. He helped us throughout the time with food. He also helped us if and when he knew that an akcja, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with the word akcja, is supposed to take place, like a pogrom, supposed to take place. He warned us, and he was great help. But the culmination of his heroism was when he was standing near the cemetery, watching the 3,000 Jews being led to the cemetery. I'm getting it. And my mother among them, and she turned around and she saw him. And she yelled to him, "Save my children." And that's when he decided to really save us. Which he rented a house outside of the town. And first he brought my sister and her boyfriend to the house. And then my brother and I, we ran away from our working camp because they were eliminating the camp. And if you read the book, it's in there. And we walked to his house, recognizing his house, because when he came to us a day after this Black Thursday, what we call, when the 3,000 people were shot in a mass grave, he told us, "Children, you are orphans, and I'm going to try and save you." And he described the house that he was renting, and there was a certain stone in the front of the house. So when my brother and I walked to the house, we recognized this stone. And we were hoping that this is the house, and that's how we got in. And he put us up in the attic in an adjacent little building that was on the premises until we started digging a bunker that he designed. And the design is in the book. And that's how we stayed in this bunker for 9 months. And during the 9 months, we brought in our aunt from outside. That was about 3 months into our stay that we asked him to bring her in to save her, which he did. Unfortunately, he at one time was called to serve in the German army. And he had to go. And he had a choice to run away and join the Ukrainian underground or to go to the military. And he decided to go because he knew that if he will not go, they may come to the building, to the house, looking for him, and they may even demolish the building. And that was one of the ironies, that he was serving in the German army in the German uniform. He sent us photographs, and not us, but to his wife, who sent it to us through the chimney. Again, if you saw the drawing in the book. And he perished. That's right. That's the bunker. He perished in the he perished fighting for the Germans. I don't know where, and I don't know which front. His wife, after we were liberated, told us that he's wounded. He's alive and he's wounded, and she needs medicine and food and things for him, which we immediately started to organize, even though we had practically no money, but somehow through different means, we got it. Later on, we realized that she actually was doing it for the organization that was the underground, Ukrainian nationalistic underground called Banderovцы, who were fighting the Russians, the Soviets. And she was one of the organizers, and we assumed that he perished because had he been alive, he would have done everything possible to connect with us. I'm convinced.
We have two questions from Avi. His mic is not working, but first is, was there any apprehension about staying put in the bunker?
Apprehension as far as what?
In terms of, I guess, staying put in the bunker rather than going on the run. I think that's what, Avi, is that what you meant? I know your mic. Yes, that's what he meant. Rather than going on the run, but staying put in one place. Where were you scared?
There was nowhere to go. And around where?
What do you remember most about being in the bunker for 9 months? Like, what stands out the most from those 9 months?
At times, I felt very safe. At times, I felt danger. At times we fought with each other. At times we loved each other.
And how did you keep yourself busy during those days? You just
How what?
how did you keep yourself busy in the bunker, like to make the time go by?
Well, first of all, we had a map and we were following the front, the fighting on the front, which Timis supplied us with a map and also sometimes with newspapers. So more or less we could follow the front coming closer to us, which was a big help for our morale. We had domino, we had cards. My brother started to write a memoir, which later on he lost it someplace. We talked about food. We reminisced our life with our parents. And sometimes we didn't talk to each other.
And do you remember the moment, what it felt like when you first saw the sun? You hadn't seen the sun in 9 months, or the sky?
I remember vividly, it was happiness, but at the same time, very sad feeling. Of course, physically, my eyes had to adjust to the light. It was March 24, 1944, and snow was still on the ground. So the reflection from the snow was very disturbing. But after a couple of hours, I adjusted.
We have another question from Avi. He wants to know if you could speak a bit about your experiences at the displaced persons camps.
I was in Salzburg displaced persons camp, and it was very, how should I say, life was very free. We felt free. We could go any place we want to go. We were getting packages from UNRWA. This is where I met my wife, Helena. And that was already 1945. Of course, the journey to the camp is another story, which if you read the book, it's there.
Can you talk about a little bit about how you met your wife and your courtship?
Sure. When we walked into the camp, my friend and I, the friend who I was traveling with throughout the journey, there was no room for us to sleep. This was a big building where Austrian military used to have their headquarters. But there were beds, bunk beds. There were bunk beds, and all the bunk beds were taken. And there were two young, beautiful girls, and they said, look, we are going to sleep in one barn bed on top, and you have the bed on the bottom. So they gave it to us. And that's how we became friends. And Helena and I, we liked each other. We were walking together, we were going out together, going out of the camp, even though there was a guard at the camp and you had to have a pass, but we found a way to get out without going through the gate. So we went to town, to Salzburg, and we were free, and we loved it, and it was very, how should I say, uplifting, very uplifting. And we had no worries. And this is how our romance started. And since then, we were in touch for years, until in 1949, we got married in the United States. And we are married for 70 years.
Wow.
71.
What was your wife's experience? Was she hidden, or was she in a camp during the war?
No, she was in different concentration camps, not the famous ones, because there were many camps that were not famous, that you didn't hear of, like Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen and so on. So she was in different camps, and at the end, she went on a death march with 300 girls, out of which 30 stayed alive.
Wow.
Because they marched from a German town to Czechoslovakia. The Germans didn't want to leave them behind. As the fighting was coming closer, and they would have been liberated a long time ago. But the Germans were so full of hate against Jews. You know, you keep talking about Nazis. I talk about Germans. Because Nazi, who are the Nazis? They're Germans. So they, under guard, under rifles, they marched them for days, for months in the winter to a town called Volare in Czechoslovakia, where they finally were liberated by the American army. And my wife was in the hospital because her feet were frozen and she had the gangrene. She had to be operated on. So she was in a hospital in Czechoslovakia. And the mayor of that town, there was a German surgeon. And the mayor of that town told the German surgeon, if anything happens to her, I'll shoot you. So that was, of course, before I knew her and we knew each other.
And where is she from? Which town?
Volare.
It's a very famous, well-known town. I know Yad Vashem has an entire exhibit about the women from that town and the death march.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
They're buried there.
did any of her family members survive?
Pardon me?
Did any of your wife's family members survive?
My wife was the only child. Her parents perished in Treblinka.
Can you
And
talk?
her grandparents perished, her whole family perished.
We have a question.
I and my family became her family.
We have a question from Rena Krautworth. She says, I'm wondering if it was difficult for you, Leon, to go back to Poland later on after everything that had happened to you there. Did you have a hard time going back? She wants to know.
I didn't have a hard time because I wouldn't go by myself. I went with my daughter, I went with my granddaughters, and that gave me the energy to show them and talk to them and explain to them. So did my wife. We went to my wife's town. She's from Częstochowa.
Oh.
And we went to her town, we went to my town, and no, it wasn't hard. It was hard to go to the cemetery.
Hi, Poppy.
Yes, Charlie.
It's Jamie.
It's Jamie.
Jamie, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You sound alike.
I know.
We do sound alike.
Can you? Sorry, guys. Can you talk
This
about?
is my new great-grandchild.
Yes, this is Rafi. This is 3-week-old great-granddaughter.
I can't kiss her.
Yeah. Well, now you're gonna make me cry. I was wondering if you could talk about, being in the bunker was such a hard thing to survive, but really afterwards, you also had so many brushes with death that you talk about in the book that it wasn't just coming out of the bunker and then wonderful survival in sunlight. It was still really hard and people still trying to kill you. And the fact that you survived even after the bunker is a miracle. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Which incident are you referring to? Can you hear me?
Yeah, she can hear. She's trying to unmute herself.
Sorry, maybe. Can you hear me over the baby?
Yes, I can.
I was just wondering, you talk a lot, about how survival of the bunker and how when you came out of the bunker, you had survived that and that was such a big thing. But there were so many brushes with death afterwards too, that
Yes,
it wasn't just survival and then walking out to freedom. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
In our journey, my friend and I, in our journey to Prague, where my friend had a family, we were forced to get off the train by the Russian soldiers, by the military, and everyone that left the train started to climb on the roof of the train. So did we. I mean, we were young kids and we decided to go on the roof of a train, which was an electric train. It was attached to cables. And everybody laid down on the roof. And when it became dark at night, 2 of the Soviet soldiers came up and were looking around. And my friend was wearing boots, like riding boots. And they noticed it. So they went over to him, and I was laying right next to him. And they said, "Take off your boots." And he didn't respond. So one of the guys sat on his stomach and started to pull his boots, yelling, "I'll shoot you like a dog. Я убью тебя как собаку," in Russian. "I'll shoot you like a dog." And I was next to him, And I thought that we are going to be thrown off this roof, the train. But my friend sort of held his toes, not letting him pull the boots off. And an officer came up and he said, "What is this commotion?" So the two guys just ran away, left, and they went down into their compartment, which at that point, we decided to leave the train. And the train slowed down, we jumped from the train. It was nowhere, and we started to walk until we came upon a little station, railroad station. It was a one shack, one so-called building with one guy standing there. And we stayed there for quite a few hours waiting for another train to come, which train was not a passenger train, but a freight train. We jumped on the freight train, hoping that it goes towards Prague. But it was going towards Budapest, which was okay too. So this was one of the incidents that we were close to be thrown off the roof of a train. Now later on, I asked my friend, "How come you didn't give him what he wanted, the Soviet guy?" And my friend said, "I had some money that my father gave him. He had it in the bottom of his boots. So he was really trying to save it."
We have a question
Yes.
here from Gabby. She says, "Hello, my name is Gabby and I'm watching with my mother. Thank you for this opportunity to listen to your testimony. As a 10th grader, what is the most valuable lesson I could share with my fellow students?"
It's a hard question for me. You can tell them what happened. They should know about the 6 million that perished. They should remember. They should never forget. And they should be watchful and speak up when there is anti-Semitism. Not be quiet. You see, we had no chance to do that. We were surrounded by anti-Semites even before World War II. Poles and Ukrainians hated us, even though they didn't kill us or they pretended to be neighborly. But when the Germans came in, they really showed their true value. So tell your children what happened. And if you can get a survivor to speak to them, that's very important. And the sooner the better, because we are on the way out.
We're so lucky to have you join us tonight. I know we're all extremely grateful.
Thank you.
We have another question. Nicole Ruth asks, what kept you going in the bunker? What were you thinking of? What were you longing for?
We were thinking of the past. We were thinking of our parents. We were thinking of our families. We were reminiscing. We were at times feeling safe and at times feeling in danger. there were moments that we were really in danger. We were supposed to go out of the bunker because, again, it's in the story, the brother of Timish's wife, who knew about the bunker, he helped us build it. For some reason, was growing around. He was crazy. And Timish's wife, at that time, Timish wasn't there anymore. She was the one that took care of us. He was already gone to serve in the German army. And she told us in a letter what's happening with her brother. And she feels that we have to get out of the bunker because he is going around telling people that there are Jews hidden. And we went through, I would say, 3 days of agony, because where are we going to go? The minute we came out, we would come out, we would be recognized immediately, even by little Ukrainian boys. They would give us away, and there was no place to go. Everything was already Judendreich. Jews were gone. Luckily, after 2.5 days or 3 days, she sent us a letter again, and she said, my brother hung himself. He committed suicide. And to her, that was a sign that God wants us to survive, because she was already getting tired of us. Since he wasn't there, she was becoming sort of lukewarm, trying to cater to us. But because this happened, to her it was a sign from God that she's supposed to help us and we are supposed to survive.
Hi, Mr. Kleiner. My name's Hannah. I have a question. I was wondering, do you have any happy memories from the war? Were there any times that you look back and think of something happy? Or when you were going through a hard time, was there any prayers or memories that you thought of specifically to get you through the really hard moments, especially when things were really tense, like when you were being interrogated or when you thought you may have been discovered in the bunker? I know that's kind of a lot of questions in one.
My happy moments came when, for example, my brother was rescued by my mother from this horrible camp, and I saw him. I was happy when at one time I was with my friend Sam, who, by the way, lives in Los Angeles. We were almost taken by the Germans, and I survived that particular akcja, that particular pogrom. And I finally came home, and I was happy to see my parents and my sister and my brother. These were happy moments. Now, speaking of my friend Sam, he actually saved me because we were in his father's shop. His father was a tinsmith, and we were sort of playing, and suddenly we heard rumors outside in the street that the Ukrainian police and the German Sonderdienst, which is the Gestapo, is catching all young men for whatever we didn't know. So his father put in shut the door, and he and I, we hid behind a workbench that they had in the shop. And I covered myself with a burlap or something. And then suddenly there was a knock on the door with yelling, "Raus, raus, Juden, raus, out, out." So the father opened the door and he ran out. And I saw immediately he was beaten with a rifle on his back. And he joined a group of the men that were already there, marching. And a German guy, stood in front of the door. He couldn't see anything because inside was very dark and outside was very light. But he was looking and he wasn't going to come in. So he kept yelling, "Anybody here? Anybody here? Rouse, rouse, anybody here?" So Sam got up and he ran out and he said, "There was nobody there." And he got beat and he ran and joined the group that was marching. But he got out of it. You know, he was a very street smart kid. When the German who were leading this group sort of walked to the front of the group, he laid down on his knees and was crawling between people's legs to go all the way to the back. And then he started to run to an alley. He knew the town very well. This is where he was born. And he started to run. And they ran after him. But he outran them. And they kept screaming, "Halt, halt, halt, stop, stop." But he jumped a fence, and they didn't want to jump a fence. And that's how he got away. So in a way, he saved me. And I'm still friends with him. We are in touch constantly. And we are friends for 80 years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
There's so many stories in the book that are incredible miracles that I read. It's amazing how your mother got your brother out of the concentration camp. It's incredible. Was there ever a point we can wrap it up if you want? I know it's been already a little bit over an hour, but were you thinking about Israel at all? Like, was Israel on your minds? Were you talking about it in the bunker? Did you ever want to go there after the war? Was that a place you felt like you wanted to go after the displaced person camp?
No, we did not. We were thinking of just being liberated. And we couldn't imagine a life after liberation. It was so far away from us.
The bunker, his mother.
We were just concerned with daily
Shot.
distance.
And your stories really put, I think, everyone's lives into perspective right now, because I know during the pandemic, people are complaining that they're in quarantine and they have to stay in their homes and they can't travel, and just listening and reading your stories about having to survive in a bunker below ground, it just, I think, is a reality check for everyone that's listening and for everyone that reads your book, that like, how dare we complain about quarantine when nobody's threatening our lives every single day, and we have the food and we have electricity and we have toilets and we have, I mean, our families. Like it's unbelievable. I think it's so important, especially now, for people not to remember not to complain every day the way that, you know.
I agree.
So thank you so much for putting our lives into perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiner.
You're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Tova to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Matova, Mr. Kleiner.
Thank you.
Stay well, stay safe.
And
Thank you for being alive. Thank you for your story.
you well.
Thank you. Yeah, Gmar Chatima Tova. Have an easy and meaningful fast, everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, it's very meaningful.
Hopefully, Liana, hopefully, God willing, when the pandemic's over, we can have you speak in person at one of our events.
It'll be a pleasure.
Okay, yeah, we're so excited.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
Everyone, thank you so much for coming. And again, thank you, Leon, so much. And to your daughters and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren who joined.
Yeah, we had 4 generations on.
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
The cutest thing ever.
I know. That was amazing. So thank you so much to you and your whole family. And we're so honored to have you here. Thank you. And to everyone, Shana Tova, and stay healthy.
Shana Tova. Thank you very much.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, thank you. I really, so important to read what you wrote. Thank you.
Shana Tova. Bye. Bye.